The legacy of Xenosaga will have massive spoilers for the entire Xenosaga Trilogy. After the release of Final Fantasy VI in 1994, Squaresoft were already in the early stages of development for the next numbered entry in Final Fantasy VII. For this, they reached out to their developers for inspiration, and one such individual came to them with his own proposal. A young Tetsuya Takahashi provided the outline of what he felt encapsulated the Final Fantasy series. Though it was rejected for being too dark, Takahashi was given approval to develop it as its own separate IP. With around 30 inexperienced developers under his direction, the end result would be Xenogears in 1998, which to this day has established its own legacy as one of the most influential JRPGs of the age. Despite that legacy though, it fell prey to the oh-so-common factor of time, as Squaresoft's 2-year development cycles meant that Takahashi was not able to fully realise the vision he had for the game. In a later interview, he confirmed that the resulting Disc 2, which saw a heavy change in gameplay from the first disc, occurred because of these time constraints, and as such the compromise was to finish the story in this way. Despite the success, it would be a source of frustration for Takahashi, and he grew tired of Squaresoft's prioritization of Final Fantasy as a series, meaning he was not able to work on the games that he wanted to. With a limit on his creative freedom, he and a colleague Sugiura decided to follow the same path many of their ilk had gone down, and established their own development studio in 1999 with the assistance of Namco called Monolith Soft. And with the power now in their hands, the duo, along with an inexperienced yet ambitious development team, set forth to create a spiritual successor to Xenogears. A saga that would realise the vision that couldn't be achieved with its predecessor, and a series that would show the world that Monolith Soft could exist among the hierarchy of established JRPG developers. Their endeavour resulted in the Xenosaga Trilogy, and apologies to my German-speaking audience in advance before I butcher the names: Xenosaga Episode 1 Der Wille zur Macht, Xenosaga Episode 2 Jenseits von Gut und Böse, and finally Xenosaga Episode 3 Also sprach Zarathustra. All of these names were drawn from the works of a German philosopher called Friedrich Wilhelm Nietzsche. Nailed it? While Nietzsche's works have become respected in fields of philosophy in the present age, Xenosaga itself did not receive the same universal plaudits as Xenogears. Instead, the jury is mostly mixed on its eventual result. Some see it as a masterpiece, while others are not as kind. The only way I was going to find out though was using that oh-so-famous method of playing the games myself. So let's go back to the year 2002 and discover the legacy of Xenosaga. Episode 1 opens at an archaeological dig where a team discovers the fabled Zohar in a lake, a main focus of the series and a source of infinite power. Floating gold plate, very important, got it. In a flash of light, the game then jumps 4,000 years into the future, where a team of researchers are doing science things on a ship. In the meantime, something that resembles the Zohar is retrieved in space and taken onto this same ship. More science things happen and we awaken in the Encephalon, a virtual reality space spawned through the mind of its host. The host is this lass, Cosmos, an android who is, well...
Understand? The algorithms I have been programmed with do not support the comprehension of illogical human thought.
Yeah, she's quite robotic at the moment, as you would expect. We're also introduced to the chief of the first development division and head of the project, Shion Uzuki, and... oh dear. Right, I know some people are gonna dunk on me for my take here, but the art style? This ain't it, man. She looks like a China doll. Some of the characters are fine, they have more realistic proportions, but the female members of the cast in particular, they just have this weird deer in a headlights look near and all the way through. The sprite's art is mostly fine, but it didn't translate well to the models. And yeah, JRPGs are rooted in their anime looks, that's one reason why I like the genre so much, but it's as if Monolith Soft took the anime dial and tuned it up to overdrive. It's too anime. I also think the animations do feel a little stiff here and there, like they're moving through treacle, but that aspect I can forgive considering it is an early work of the studio. I know some people are more in tune with this style, but it wasn't for me at all. Anyway, the Encephalon acts as the first dungeon and we get a few tutorials beforehand detailing the various mechanics in the game, and we get our first taste of combat here. It's a turn-based system that draws clear inspiration from Xenogears. Every character can attack, use ether skills, items, and so on. Attacks are initiated through a string with the square, circle, and triangle buttons mapped to particular moves that can be changed via customization menus. The length of these strings depend on how many action points the character has, with 4 being granted per turn and a max of 6 per member. Each skill used uses up 2 action points. So what you can do is save up action points to a max of 6 to chain together longer combos if you so wish. Each character also has an individual boost gauge, which when activated allows them to jump in front of all others on the timeline for an instant action. This stacks up to 3 and becomes a key part of the battle system, especially as you get closer to the end. Xenosaga drew yet more inspiration from its predecessor with the use of the AGWS units, or eggs for short, which are basically giant mechs. Like the characters, they come with their own equipment set, and if anything offer another way to play, especially for boss battles with their high HP pools and generally strong damage. Some characters will have these and they can board them during combat. Now they seem cool, but the most prominent issue is that characters cannot heal or use their abilities while in these units. And generally speaking, for adaptability, I found it was better to not even use them for actual combat. The only time I do so would be to tank heavy hitting attacks that could wipe the party. Every character at the end of the battle will also get ether points, skill points, and tech points. Ether points get you new spells, skill points get unique commands, and tech points boost your character's raw stats. It's an interesting method to add to the traditional elements of progression and certainly gives plenty of options to the player. Each character also feels distinct with their own unique skills that can be learned with these points, so class roles are prominent too. Overall, it's a good battle system, if not a little slow at points. Just before Xion leaves the Encephalon, she encounters a weird little girl. She says nothing, but she's there. When the test ends, Xion returns to the research room, where we also get a more clear view of her direct subordinate, Alan. And he's a very jittery individual.
Beta male, got it.
The scene then jumps to the bridge, where the captain and his second-in-command are talking about the cargo they brought on board. The fleet was sent to investigate the disappearance of a planet and pick up any loose objects discovered in that vicinity. It turns out that Xion and her development team were taken on this mission as a matter of protection, with Cosmos as the trump card should anything go wrong, but of course they've got nothing to worry about. Xion goes to deliver some reports to the bridge, which means we get control again. Now while we're making our way over there, I want you to listen to these bopping beats en route. Did you like that? Here's another one. No, you're not going deaf. There is literally nothing in the overworld sections, for the most part at least. Contrary to belief that this was due to budget, the lack of music was a conscious design choice by Takahashi himself, feeling that the lack of music would aid in the overall ambience, that being the emptiness of space. You're hearing your footsteps, machinery clanking in the background, maybe it would work for some ASMR playlist. And I totally agree that a lack of music can work in certain cases. I use Dark Souls as the example here, which for the most part had no music at all except for some cutscenes and boss fights. The thing with Dark Souls though is that the environment was a danger in of itself. Every movement, every sound of a broken box or skittering rodent was the potential for danger in that game. Sound design was imperative to the dread it made the player feel as they made their way through the world. In the case of Xenosaga Episode 1 though, there's no inherent danger from being on a populated cruiser floating through space. It just feels jarring to me, and it became one of the most disappointing aspects of the game. With the involvement of Yasunori Mitsuda, one of my personal favourite composers of the genre, I was looking forward to the OST, only to be met with silence in many cases. It's also really lacking in scope. Even if we accept the design decision that Takahashi chose to omit music in environments to be more in tune with the emptiness of space, that does not justify the severe lack of battle music. The same battle theme pretty much all the way through, minus the final boss. I just think they put too little importance on it, and it's a shame because we know that mindset did a complete 180 come their next big project in Xenoblade. Anyway, we go a little down the hallway and oh come on, another cutscene! I'm sure you've noticed by now, but there's a ton of them in this game. Episode 1 was famous, or infamous depending on where you look, for having over 8 hours of FMV cutscenes, with a few of them lasting for well over 20 minutes at a time. Despite my exclamation though, I actually like this. Once again, it was a conscious design choice by Monolith Soft to make the game more cinematic, and many of the cutscenes look good for the time, if not difficult to follow at points. It showed to me that Monolith Soft really wanted to put the story at the forefront of these games. They wanted to create something deep and engaging. The cutscenes would be the window to allow them to do that, and as such, they put a lot of effort into this facet. As a story over gameplay enthusiast, I welcomed it with open arms, and they were nice breaks in between gameplay to get lost in the universe that the developers had made. During this scene, we learn of a so-called accident from 2 years ago involving Cosmos, which is why Shion is so hesitant with the intensity of the experiments. In her haste, she has also forgotten a data drive, so Alan goes to find her, and we also find out he has the hots for the chief. Well, those eyes don't lie, mate. In the meantime, Shion walks past the cargo, which is the Zohar we saw after the time skip. We don't know it yet, but this is merely an emulator of the original. For the purposes of this video though, and to keep in line with narrative flow, I'm just gonna call it the Zohar for now. She also sees this lovely fellow lambasting his crew, Vandekam. Nice tattoo, lad. This moment causes her to reminisce back to a time in the past with a fellow researcher, Kevin, at an earlier time in Cosmos' development. When she comes to, the world freezes and she once again sees the creepy little girl. Yep, she's important, thanks for letting me know, game. On the way, Shion is called in to check on the so-called Realians, which are cybernetic organisms that look similar to humans, but for all intents, are not. Some are made for specific purposes like combat, and they are mostly made to serve humans in some capacity. This polarity between humanity and Realian becomes an important theme of the series in of itself, and forms some of the arcs that occur along the way. Shion clearly has some form of attachment to Realians, as evidenced here, which is why she's so well versed in their makeup. We also meet another charming fellow, Lieutenant Virgil, who gets a little too close to the Realian. This guy, unlike Shion, hates Realians, reprimanding Shion for calling them people. Interplanetary racism, or Realianism, whatever. We also get a little background on a planet called Miltia, which is apparently the homeworld of Shion, and then we're finally given control again. Now, while also acting as a way to explore the ship, this opening sequence does a decent job of showing the interactive environments in the game too, using items to traverse different areas or simply changing the surroundings in some way. Running from guards, opening airlocks, they seem inconsequential, but it's actually a precursor for what is to come. Shion gets to the bridge and finds yet another lovely dude. Man, this ship is a magnet for arseholes apparently. Andrew Cherenkov chews her out about the progress of Cosmos' project. The commander himself though tells Cherenkov to chill. Turns out Cherenkov has skeletons in the closet though, as he talks to someone called Margilis, who is clearly an antagonist. Did the eye scar not tip you off? He warns Cherenkov that something is en route to their fleet and to prepare for it. In the meantime, we bump into Shion back in her room talking to her bro. This is the only time we see him for now, but he's a big deal, trust me. Soon after, what Margilis warned about appears, a horde of Nosis that infiltrates the ship. And even worse, Nosis are impervious to all attacks, with Cosmos being the only one who can harm them. They also turn people into salt, so I hope you got your chips. From here, the game turns into some sort of survival horror, where if you get into battle, you're basically dead. This is where the exploration of the ship comes in handy from earlier on. If a space idol can distract a human, it can also do the same for a Nosis. Boogie. Back at the research hub, Cosmos activates itself despite no code being used. Unlike 2 years ago though, she doesn't kill the researchers, she just goes out to find Shion, and removes her visor for good measure to show that she means business. Thanks Cosmos, I always wanted to see more of that gripping art style. As Shion makes her way back to the lab avoiding the Nosis, she bumps into our old pal Virgil, who almost shoots her. I have no idea how he missed. As the Nosis wrecks the ship, Cherenkov makes for the Zohar, and it turns out that him and Vandekam are working together to get the cargo over to Margilis. As Shion and the Vanguard retreat further into the ship, Virgil uses the control code within the Realians to force them to fight and sacrifice themselves against the Nosis, an action that is explicitly allowed in galactic lore during wartime. Now this is quite a hard scene to watch even early on, and I see it as a representation of the philosophic teachings of Friedrich, in particular the will to power, which is the translated form of the game's title. This moment here draws on his thoughts concerning free will, which he believed to be folly. As said by the man himself, the desire for freedom of will in the superlative, metaphysical sense such as still holds sway, unfortunately in the minds of the half-educated, the desire to bear the entire and ultimate responsibility for one's actions oneself. In terms of Xenosaga, that concept of free will could be applied to the Realians. They are created for a purpose and are subject to the wills of others. No matter how strong their will is, they are merely tools for the use of their operator. Again, this polarity between Realian and human continues to be a pertinent theme throughout Xenosaga as a series. There's no mistake in the dialogue here when Shion says he shouldn't be playing God with their lives. If you want the TLDR though, Virgil's a dick. Anyway, the ploy doesn't work, obviously, but just as hope seems lost, Cosmos busts down the wall and jumps in. Using the so-called Hilbert effect, she is able to bring Nosis to the realm of common space, meaning that now they can be harmed by weapons. Cosmos is happy to lay down the hurt, and she even has dual triple miniguns to make that happen. That's cool. Cosmos reveals that the target of the Nosis is most likely the Zohar in the hangar, so they better make their way down there, as there's also pods down there to escape. So looks like we got a fight again, and Virgil joins our team for good measure. Right, I see what's going on here. He starts off as an unlikable git and gets some sort of redemption as the game goes on. Hey, those are normally my favourite types of characters. I cannot wait to see what Xenosaga does. All that can happen, I guess. Cosmos lays down some facts as to why she did this. For efficiency. Virgil just got in her line of fire. No hard feelings, right? But of course, after the incident 2 years prior, Shion isn't too thrilled that her project has once again killed a human with no remorse. Now naturally, I've got to give a bit of focus to Cosmos herself. She is undoubtedly the most interesting part about the first game. Everything from the mystery behind her and why she was created, what her purpose is and the history of her development, Cosmos displays many notable actions during this first game, and she's a main driving force for the series' overall narrative. I can't deny as well, it was great to watch her take names and not break a sweat while doing so. That's a nice bonus. In terms of the evolution of her character, we don't really see too much of that in episode 1, but there's a clear dichotomy between her more matter-of-fact and robotic approach compared to Shion's empathy as a human. Despite that, she's not completely unaware of the situation either, even offering a few supporting words in later scenes to characters who are going through the ringer. She still maintains that blunt approach while doing so, but that's what makes her so good in those scenes. Cosmos was one of the characters that I latched onto early on. I was engrossed with how her story would unfold, and early scenes like this became the initial spark for that interest. We get one final boss fight in front of the Zohar before the ship bites the dust and the golden plate disappears. Now the ship may be destroyed, but Cosmos' directive remains the same: get to Second Miltia. The issue though is, how does she get there? Don't worry, she's got just the thing.
One more strike and this window will shatter.
She's picked up by a scavenger crew aboard a ship called the Elsa, well, more like she forced them to do it. She also has no intention of bringing Shion or Alan on board, but we get to see Shion's stubbornness on full display here. With Shion putting hers and Alan's life at risk,
dick move, bro!
She forces Cosmos to take them along for the journey, where they also get introduced to this chap, Chaos. He's fairly important, but not for now. Talking about importance, I didn't even realise Cherenkov was still here. I saw him in space with Cosmos, but not at any time after that. Well, he is here, and that's it, I guess. See what I mean when I said the cutscenes can be a little difficult to follow at times? Anyway, they're all getting along, but surprise, the Nosis are still here. Cherenkov is about to get saltified when Chaos shows off his skill, the ability to destroy Nosis with a touch. That is handy. The scene pans over to a guy called Wilhelm, or Wilhelm, depending on what you want to say. I'm going to say Wilhelm, and a red-cloaked man, who clearly have some grand ideas in mind, and it looks like they were involved with the activation of Cosmos when the Nosis attacked. The cutscene continues and jumps to Margulis along with his second-in-command Pellegrini, head members of the UTIC organization. Based on this screen, it looks like Margulis and UTIC were involved with the disappearance of this planet in an attempt to get the Zohar back. Well, that worked well, didn't it? But we're not done with the cutscenes. We get introduced to this badass looking fellow, Ziggurat 8, a cyborg brought back to life after his suicide many years ago. He's sent on a mission to rescue a Realian called Momo from a secret facility of UTIC. Back on this facility, Margulis puts on the charm offensive with Momo and says that they plan to extract the man hidden inside her head. Ziggurat goes Solid Snake and sneaks in to find his charge with a flashback detailing why Momo is so important. The man inside her refers to the Y data left by scientist Joachim Mizrahi, founder of UTIC and a madman according to Yuli, his ex-wife. This data is pertinent for the future of mankind itself, and Momo along with the 100 series Realians were created by him. These Realians were designed to fight the Nosis. We do some more stealth and eventually find her in a cell. Opening the door though sets off the alarm as well, but before doing that, Ziggurat needs a new name.
I know! How about I call you Ziggy instead? Z-I-G-G-Y. It's short for Ziggurat.
Imaginative. Before they escape, Margulis cuts them off. We take him out in a boss fight, arguably the most challenging to this point, blow up some and yoink a ship to escape. Just after this, a mysterious white-haired dude appears who clearly has a connection to Margulis in some way. Back on the Elsa, Chaos opens up the pod for Cosmos, ominously stating that they finally get to meet again, and follows with the quote, "Where's the real you?" Interesting. Cherenkov then arrives in the room after Chaos leaves and reminisces on an event from the past. It turns out that he was charged with stealing the Cosmos prototype 2 years prior, but her activation caused her to go on a rampage. Now I want to give a quick mention of Cherenkov himself here, as he's yet another highlight of episode 1 despite his short amount of screen time. Much like Cosmos, he's a very interesting character, and his arc over this game reflects the title of the game in many ways. He's intrinsically linked to many of the events that happen during this title, and it's always a draw to see what his role and purpose is. It's a shame that his story ends in this one game, but his character arc was important in terms of delivering an overall message. We pan back to Momo and Ziggy, where he informs that he is to take her to second Miltia as per his orders. We also discover that the Y data acts as a sort of key to a lost sector, a sector integral to the so-called Zohar project. Still being pursued by Utic, the Elsa bumps into the Momo-Ziggy duo and saves them, bringing them on board. And more introductions are in order. We jump over to this chap, Junior. More big eyes. Junior realises that the planet Ariadne has disappeared, and they were led there via a distress signal from the now deceased Voglinde. Back on the Elsa, Cherenkov makes contact with Margulis, confirming that Momo is on the ship, but before they can draw a plan of retrieval, the white-haired dude takes the job instead. While investigating the wreckage of the Voglinde, Junior is attacked by Utic mechs, with the mothership destroying the remaining wreckage as he escapes. Knowing that Utic are involved somehow, Junior uses his own ship, the Durandal, to ram right into the Utic vessel and infiltrate it for info. Him and his assistant Mary make their way through, but are prevented from taking any info from the mainframe. It looks like it's Fry. And Mary roasts our boy about his height for good measure.
Although, in Little Master's case, it's probably just a complex about his height.
Probably.
Harsh. The Elsa docks at a nearby station where Cherenkov sneaks off in an effort to return to Utic. Now I haven't given much discussion to the exploration, but the reason being is because there isn't much to say. The game, and series as a whole, is mostly linear, but the trilogy does reward you for returning to older areas in order to open up these encoded doors, which you find keys for throughout the game. These often are worth the time investment in terms of what you can find. To its additional credit, there are also a fair amount of secrets in the world, including optional bosses that up the challenge a bit. It's not much, but it at least gives the incentive to do so. Realising that he's gone, the group set out to look for Cherenkov, who's getting a beat down in a back alley. Before it cuts out though, Cherenkov's head glows with an ominous symbol. When the group get back to the alleyway, Cherenkov is already gone, but they find the aftermath in the crowd of injured attackers. Cherenkov in the meantime has returned to the Elsa to treat himself. How the heck did they miss him in the first place? It's just a straight path back. We also get a nice moment between Momo and Ziggy here that touches on the concept of being a living being, since they're for all intents both artificially created. This duo is but one of many key relationships in the game, and is given a fair amount of time to grow during the course of the saga, with Momo seeing Ziggy as the father she lost, and Ziggy seeing her as the son he lost many years prior. They're sort of struggling with their own identities and bounce off each other to realise their place in the world. And there are a lot of relationships of this ilk throughout the series, like Cosmos and Shion, Shion and Alan, Junior and Momo, and Chaos and Cosmos. In episode 1 though, these relationships are merely surface level, intentionally, as it wants you to stick around for later episodes. The point here though is to merely set them up for those later developments. With Cherenkov found, the Elsa leaves the port and makes way to second Miltia once again. En route, the ship is drawn out of hyperspace by a horde of Nosis. Overwhelmed, they end up inside of one, where Cosmos can sense that the Zohar is close, and the commander is once again missing for good measure. The scene pans to Cherenkov, who seems to recognise this place as Ariadne, the planet that disappeared during a Zohar experiment. This is confirmed via the relics found within the Nosis, like signs and old buildings. We start to get a bit more background on Cherenkov and his origins, in particular that he underwent personality reconditioning as a previous convict. It eventually reached such a level of reconditioning that his human rights were revoked completely. Soon after this event, Margulis meets him and takes him under the umbrella of the Utic organization. Under Utic, Cherenkov was the one who conducted the experiment that caused Ariadne to disappear. The group progresses further through to get to the core, and I must say I do like this dungeon overall, especially with how it gradually shifts to man-made structures. It fits the theme of an eerie and unknown environment. They eventually find the Zohar in the depths, along with Cherenkov, who is phasing out of existence. He reveals to the group his responsibility in the disappearance of Ariadne and the reason for the sudden mobilization of the Federation fleet. It was all to retrieve the Zohar. Cherenkov then transforms into a Nosis himself for a boss fight, but just like many up till this point, it's not too taxing. Come the end of the fight, Shion finds herself on a beach of nothingness alongside Cherenkov, where his full backstory is revealed. Cherenkov was manufactured as a weapon of war 36 years prior, a super soldier created through the Life Recycling Act who only knew how to kill. However, he was brought into the world right at the end of the war sparked by the Zoa incident, and thus he never found meaning in his existence. The flashbacks we saw prior were him attempting to assimilate to normal life on Ariadne, hence why he underwent personality reconditioning to try and adjust. However, his latent genes were so rooted in his being that he could never fit in no matter how hard he tried, and out of frustration of being seemingly rejected by the world, he would revert back to his prior instincts. This is why his forehead glows. That mark is a representation of his latent nature resurfacing. Cherenkov could never find a place in the world, and he openly admits that in the end he rejected it. So this moment of peace and realization on the beach where only he exists is where he is at his happiest, where he feels fulfilled. Cherenkov is a lesson in many ways for those who struggle to find meaning in their lives, that even though there are times where we feel we can't adjust to the world around us, there will always be a place for us. We just need to continually push forward to find that degree of comfort. It's a very well conveyed character arc overall, and thought-provoking to boot. Unfortunately, this is the last time we'll see him. With Cherenkov gone, the massive Nosis they were inside of begins to disappear, with the group rescued by the Elsa, which in turn is saved by Junior and the Durandal as they're pursued by the large Nosis swarm. We then get a cool scene with loads of lasers, what a rave. But it's trumped by the next pre-rendered scene where Cosmos shows off her anti-Nosis abilities, stepping out onto the Elsa's hull and blasting them all away in seconds, or absorbing them in this case. Yeah, when Xenosaga wants to, it goes full on and doesn't let up either. Soon after they board the Durandal, and it looks like the Elsa crew and Chaos are affiliated with Junior, who makes it known that his real name is something else. For another time though. After that skirmish, the Elsa is in need of repairs, so they make their way back to the Kukai Foundation, the company run by Junior and his partner. They take the Zohar emulator and jump to hyperspace. While en route, the group are taken to the isolation chamber within the Durandal, where Junior reveals the other emulators just like the one that was the focus of the game till now, and all are named after the Apostles of Christ. Further within, Junior also reveals a horrid truth to the group. Nosis apparently metamorphose from humans. The phenomenon of the Nosis itself stemmed from Joachim Mizrahi, who went too deep into his research and unleashed them on the world during the Miltian War 14 years prior, and the Kukai Foundation was formed to investigate the occurrences behind that war. Eventually, the Durandal arrives at the Foundation in one of the best looking cutscenes in the entire series, really selling the scope of some of these locales. This is when the FMV cutscenes are at their best. They're greeted by a guy who looks like a grown-up Junior called Guinan, who welcomes them and lets them chill out while the Elsa gets its repairs. So you know what that means. Beach time! Unfortunately, even beach time is not a moment to relax. We can't go 2 seconds without talking about business. During this time, Momo suspects that Junior and Guinan are related in a way, but not as father and son, nor as traditional brothers. Ooh. Back at the UTIC base, Margulis is discussing the importance of retrieving the Y data, stating that they may need to use the Song of Nephilim. The white-haired dude makes an appearance once again, but we also get his name, Albedo. He seems like a cheerful fellow.
I don't share your perverse taste in hobbies.
Yeah, right, you gutless bastard.
Maybe a little too cheerful. As they draw nearer to Second Miltia, Junior gives a charm to Momo, which seemingly comes out of nowhere, but remember, these relationships are surface level for the time being. It all makes sense eventually. You see, Xenosaga Episode 1 is all about setting the stage. It intentionally leaves a lot in the air. It's designed to keep you engaged to see what the next installment brings, as long-running series must do. Utawareru Mono, Trails, long-running and interconnected stories like these do have the self-contained plots for a specific game, but also provide foundation for the revelations in later games too. Players aren't going to buy your sequel if there's nothing to go on. And it's this approach that Episode 1 utilises as well. Relationships like Momo's and Junior's are left vague to be addressed in later chapters. Episode 1 is very much a game that sets up many of the arcs rather than seeing them through to the end, which is arguably the most difficult thing to do in a long-running epic. You don't want to give too much away in the early stages, but you still need to balance that with a gripping plot that compels players to see it through to the end. I personally feel that Episode 1 mostly hits that balance. As they enter Miltian space, a spanner is thrown in the works. The Kukai Foundation are framed for the destruction of the Volglinde by UTIC, and they have the video to prove it. Well damn. It's taken under jurisdiction, but the Miltian government, led by Representative Helmer, has an insider who helps them out at the jam. Helmer is then contacted by the head of Vector, Wilhelm, who lends Cosmos to their efforts in an effort to stop the reawakening of something called Udu.
Power of voodoo. You do. Remind me is the babe.
The plan for the group now is to prove their innocence, and the best way to do that is to dive into the encephalon of Cosmos, as she has untampered records of what really happened aboard the Volglinde. The dive doesn't go completely to plan though, and the group end up scattered on a ruined planet. Junior recognises it as Miltia, the planet sealed off 14 years ago and Shion's home planet. Shion, on the other hand, meets the girl once again, who calls herself Nephilim. It seems that this world has been constructed based on the subconscious memories of Shion herself, intertwined with Cosmos. Nephilim states that Shion must eventually return to this place as it holds great importance to her. Of course, not so easy when it's currently sealed away. We fight our way through the ruins of Miltia until Junior's group encounters the UTIC organization's old headquarters, Labyrinthos. On top of this building, Joachim Mizrahi recites a phrase from the Old Testament and then dies by falling off the roof. Sorry Momo, but he seems like a total nut to me. Back with Shion's group, we make our way through a forest. Now the Nosis are pretty unsettling here, that's a given, but they're completely trumped by this creepy looking bunny. Look at that face. Eventually the two groups reunite at a church, and inside they find a Realian named Fabronia. Fabronia. That sounds familiar. That's nothing important, I'm sure. Shion seems to have a connection to Feb, who compels her to face her most painful memories. Going through the door brings them to a facility where Shion's mother was once hospitalized, and she sees dead people plus some ghostly figures that merge into one. Junior experiences a memory as well of Albedo back in front of a massive hole. In typical JRPG fashion, that means another boss fight. I think it's a good time to go over those briefly. Overall, many of the bosses are fairly easy in the games, at least for the main story, but I do applaud that they all feel distinct from each other. Tiamat, for example, the name of this enemy, is tied specifically to Junior and Shion since this world is shaped around their memories. In a representation of them accepting those memories, the final blow must be done by both of them, and it will react to the actions of those characters too, so it gives you a two-pronged method to take him down. Most bosses sport strategies along these lines and do require differing approaches to take down. This is definitely a strong point of Xenosaga as a series. Defeating the boss brings us to the moon from Majora's Mask? It even has the kids running around. These children are called Cecily and Kath, and they are the sisters of Feb, who are happy in what appears to be a man-made illusion. In reality, they are trapped in a false world, and Feb asks Shion to free her sisters. And if they don't do it, well, they're shown what that could mean, with Cosmos facing off against Udu in a vision, and the seeming destruction of the universe resulting from that. Shion and the group must rescue Kath and Cecily to prevent this future from happening. Change the future, as Shulk would say. At the very bottom we see Cosmos chained to a cross, and they manage to get out of the encephalon. With the surveillance received, the Foundation's innocence is proven and passed over to the Federation. All good. As the group gather themselves for the final jump to Second Miltia, they hear an ominous song, with Guinan and Junior recognising it as the Song of Nephilim. This seems to draw in the Nosis once again. In an effort to evacuate all the civilians aboard the Foundation, Cosmos uses the Hilbert effect to make the Nosis vulnerable. They make their way down to town, smack some Nosis, save the people, and get on the shuttle. Don't judge me as well, these swimsuits were the best equipment I had at the time. Momo stays behind to heal some of the more severely injured, but when they return, she's gone. It looks like she's been kidnapped and taken aboard a mysterious vessel by our boy Albedo. Momo finds number 97 of the 100 series units, and she realises that this place belonged to Joachim Mizrahi. From this unit, she is given a memory of her father before she was born, where he states that she will become his Sakura. And then Albedo bitch slaps the unit. Further in, Momo finds a bunch of inactive or broken Realians and Albedo himself. In here, he starts to spout bad guy things like, have a listen.
Ah, my beautiful little Kirschwasser. But still, can you really call this a corpse?
Wait, what was that? Rewind it.
But still, can you really call this a corpse?
Well, that's weird. Right, this will be a good time to talk about censorship. This particular scene was censored for the Western release. In fact, all of the games experienced it in some way. This was done in order to achieve a teen rating from the ESRB. That crack that you just heard was a soundbite from the original uncensored release, where instead of dropping the Kirschwasser's arm, Albedo breaks it instead. In fact, there were quite a few segments from the scene that were changed, and there's a good video which shows a side-by-side comparison between the two variants. I'd give it a watch if you get the time. Now, if you didn't piece together that Albedo's a bit off his rocker by this scene, you certainly realise it now. Dude literally pulls his head off, but it grows back soon after, so he's immortal. Honestly speaking, I think the uncensored version is way more harrowing for that than the original, but hey, what do I know? Anyway, a dismembered Albedo realises that Momo holds someone with red hair dear to her, someone called Rubido, and he seems quite happy about this.
It's Rubido! Oh, that's just perfect!
He does like to laugh, I'll give him that, and he has a way with words too.
Ah, ma belle pêche.
In seriousness though, Albedo is such a good antagonist for the game, in my opinion the best of the series. He's just completely unhinged. Characters like this are so easy to get wrong where they almost become comical, but they nailed Albedo. He's just got that edge about him, you're never at ease when you watch him on screen. You then add on his clear fascination with Momo and the connection to Rubido, who is, spoilers, Junior. He sets up the stage very well for himself, in particular the mystery tied to how his character became so twisted, another feather in the cap for the storytelling in episode 1. I also have to give props to the voice actor here, he really sold the madness of Albedo well. It jumps back to the Nosis attack where the Damarung mothership of Vector Industries wipes out the hordes. From here, Junior lets everyone know what is causing this phenomena, that being the Song of Nephilim. He states it as the worst creation Mizrahi ever made and was the reason Old Miltia was destroyed by the Nosis. With Cosmos' help, they shift the structure of the song to common space, while Albedo goes digging for the Y data and Momo. Junior confirms to the group that Albedo is his dark half, explaining why Albedo was so happy earlier on as a head. With the Elsa, they land on the song to find Momo. And they find her. But looks like Albedo took her consciousness, so they haven't really found her. Now this will be a good time to bring up the dungeons, as the Song of Nephilim is where the puzzle solving becomes more prominent, at least for episode 1. You've got weight puzzles, circling around, central hubs, unlockable doors. Yeah, this is definitely a JRPG dungeon. For me, the puzzles never become obnoxious though, they were fairly balanced in this game and in line with the scale of the environments themselves. As a result of that, there's a sufficient downtime between just walking and exploring and the puzzles themselves, and it helps that they aren't too frustrating to deal with either. It thus feeds into a good sense of progression as you make your way through. I confess I don't like puzzles, like at all, but I had no issue with the ones that episode 1 presented. In the core, they find Albedo, who does some more antagonist taunting, but more notably he lets everyone know that the waves of Udu have evolved his body, giving a glimpse into potentially why he's a bit eccentric. Chaos realises as well what Albedo is, a URTV just like Junior, an anti-existence for Udu itself. As Albedo delves deeper into Momo's subconscious to find the Y data, Junior unleashes his own power to stop him. We get a boss fight against his badass mech, and then anime battle! And then another boss fight that we can walk away from before fighting. That's nice of him. This blue-robed fellow isn't too difficult though, more a precursor of what's to come than anything else. He clearly knows Shion as well, as he tells her to meet him at that place. The group escape back into the Durandal, but Albedo isn't done yet. Using the info he took from Momo, he uses the Song of Nephilim to call forth a massive space station. Momo recognises it as Proto Merkabah, the place where she was built. We also see that the blue-robed fellow was our boy Virgil, who got bullet sponged by Cosmos back on the Volglindo, so turns out he is important. In the meantime, Proto Merkabah shows off its firepower by destroying the Federation fleet. I'm getting SA2 vibes. The group know they gotta stop this before it's used to, say, destroy a planet. Proto Merkabah itself is big, but nothing too crazy as far as final dungeons go. It does potentially have the most annoying boss of the game though, this thing that just wouldn't stop healing. This is where the boost meter comes in real handy. A bit further in, we can also look at a star chart where we get a reference to Lost Jerusalem, the original home of mankind which appears to be wiped from the map. We go down a big lift, get to the core, and meet Albedo for the last time, at least in episode 1. And this is definitely the hardest part of the mainline story, as you might expect. Albedo is a quick mudder, not too damaging per se, but annoying to deal with, especially considering what's on the way. In the following cutscene, we discover why Albedo went mad. Not only was he infested with the waves of Udu, but he sees Junior as a traitor who severed the mental link between all of the URTVs 14 years prior, causing all of them to go mad via Udu's waves. Albedo, as a result of that, wants to make him repent for his actions. The real fight comes immediately after. No second phase for Albedo, but instead, the core opens up to the main power source of the entire facility, the battery being Nosis themselves. This combination of Nosis spawns into the mother of Nosis that we gotta take down, and I had way more trouble on this fight than I care to admit. The biggest issue was its one-shot mechanic near the end of the fight. I could never time my eggs boarding correctly to tank the hit. I could have used a secret weapon for this fight, but I wanted to give myself the challenge. Don't worry, I did use it later on though. Can I also say as well, the boss music rocks for this fight. A shame it's the only time it really changes. Unfortunately, killing the power source and shutting the reactor comes too late, and the vessel is on its way down to Second Miltia. It falls, the planet dies, and game over. And thus ends the Xenosaga series. Nah. Instead, the group managed to break the facility apart before it hits the atmosphere, saving the planet and bringing the journey to a close for episode 1. Our main goal was to get the Second Miltia, and now we're finally here. A few detours, but we made it! Overall, Xenosaga Episode 1 was all about setting the stage, and it did it well enough to garner an initial following, an audience that was looking forward to what came next. It was well received to the point that it also got a visual novel tie-in as part of a supplementary disc with the first game, 3 manga volumes, and also an anime in an effort to push it to a multimedia stage. There was clearly a market there when the game first came out. It introduced many plot points and hooks for the 2 later entries and does a good job with that. For me, in terms of setup, Xenosaga as a series is one of the best with all of its organizations, politics, religious undertones, and spacefaring terminology. It's certainly a story you have to stay switched on for, but it is engaging, and I can't deny rewatching the footage back after playing the whole trilogy gave me an even greater appreciation for how it was all structured. Combine that with a decent turn-based battle system, and it's mostly a satisfactory experience. But please, bring back the music and change those models. Please! Thank you for watching this video. If you liked it, please like and subscribe for more JRPG content and consider joining my Patreon if you're interested. Peace.